Chapter 1. Congratulations, old man. The chandeliers glittered like diamonds above a room filled with polished egos and champagne flutes. Velvet-draped tables, gold-trimmed chairs, a live jazz trio in tuxedos. The retirement party for Maxwell Donovan was nothing short of elite. 40 years of loyal service at Portland National Bank had earned him more than a pension. It had earned him this moment. Supposedly, he stood near the stage, straight-backed in a charcoal suit, shoulders squared like a soldier. His salt and pepper hair was neatly combed, his navy tie pinned with a silver clip shaped like an eagle. The man was quiet, always had been, but his presence demanded attention like a general at a war table. The room buzzed with shallow toasts and fake laughs. Colleagues he'd mentored decades ago clinked glasses and tried to talk investments like he still gave a damn. But Maxwell, like always, just listened stoic, detached, observing. Across the room, Vivian, his wife of 37 years, glided from table to table like a hostess in her prime. Her champagne-colored dress hugged her figure strategically, more elegance than warmth. Her smile never reached her eyes. "She's working the room like she's running for office," muttered Jack Calloway, Maxwell's former deputy. Maxwell didn't reply. He just sipped his whiskey neat and kept watching. Preston, his son, leaned against the bar, custom suit, flashy watch, whiskey sour in hand. Always overdressed for a man who hadn't held a job for more than a year. He was laughing with a few of his poker buddies, mouth open, face animated. Probably already spent half of what he thought he was getting from Maxwell's pension. Natalie, his daughter, stood next to Vivian by the stage. Power suit, high heels sharp enough to stab someone, arms crossed like she was waiting to prosecute someone. She'd made a name for herself in court, sure, but the last 5 years had hardened her into someone unfamiliar. Smug, cold. Maxwell's name echoed through the room as the MC tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? Let's welcome the man of the hour, Maxwell Donovan." Applause erupted as Maxwell made his way to the stage. He moved with the slow, measured stride of a man who knew the weight of legacy. But he also knew how quickly people forgot legacies when money entered the picture. Vivian stepped up beside him, wrapping her arm around his as if they'd been a picture-perfect couple for decades. A photographer captured the moment. She turned to him with a dazzling smile that didn't match the frost in her voice. "Say something charming," she whispered through clenched teeth. Maxwell tilted his head slightly, offered a polite smile, and took the mic. 40 years at Portland National, he began, his voice gravel and gravitas. It wasn't just a career. It was purpose, discipline, loyalty, all the things I was raised to value. A few polite claps. "But I've learned something else along the way," he continued, pausing as his eyes slowly scanned the crowd. "The longer you serve, the easier it is for people to mistake silence for stupidity." A few chuckles. Vivian's grip on his arm stiffened. He handed the mic to the MC and stepped back. Vivian moved up like a Broadway star awaiting her final scene. "Wasn't that lovely?" she said, voice syrupy sweet. "But now, I'd like to raise a toast. Not just to Maxwell, but to new beginnings." The room quieted. Vivian reached behind the podium and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. She held it in both hands like it was a damn award. "Max, darling," she said, turning to face him fully. "After 40 years of service, we think you deserve something more permanent." So, Natalie had these prepared. She handed him the envelope. He opened it. Inside, divorce papers. Legal, binding, time-stamped. There was a long pause before anyone reacted. The band stopped playing. A woman in the crowd gasped. Vivian kept smiling. "We've decided it's best to part ways now," she said matter-of-factly. "No point in pretending. You've done your duty. You can keep the condo in Flagstaff, maybe." Maxwell blinked once, slowly. Natalie stepped forward with a glass of red wine in hand, grinning like the cat that just skinned the dog. "It's nothing personal, Dad," she said. "It's just, efficiency. We figured it's better to settle this here and now. Clean, quick, public." Preston sauntered over and clapped him on the back. "Congrats on 40 years of wasting your life, old man," he said, raising his drink. "But hey, You build a hell of pension. Don't worry, we'll put it to good use. Laughter. Not from the crowd, but from Natalie and Preston. Vivian just stood there, eyes cold, waiting. Maxwell glanced down at the papers again. Divorce. Pension division. Spousal support. Waiver of property claims. Natalie had drafted it all. He looked at each of them slowly. Vivian, the woman who once cried in his arms during a thunderstorm. Natalie, who he taught how to ride a bike, how to tie a tie when she wanted to wear one to law school interviews. Preston, who crashed his first car, and Maxwell paid to fix it quietly so the boy wouldn't get a record. They looked back at him like wolves circling a wounded deer. Maxwell did not flinch. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a Mont Blanc pen, the very one Vivian gave him on their 25th anniversary. He clicked it. Natalie raised an eyebrow. Really? That easy? Preston scoffed. Knew he'd fold. He's a dinosaur. Maxwell signed. One stroke, then another, then one final line. He closed the folder, placed the pen on top of it, then looked up, expression unreadable. Understood, he said. He handed the folder back to Natalie. The room had gone silent. All eyes were on him. Maxwell adjusted his jacket, nodded once to the crowd, turned, and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. He did not look back, not even once. Chapter 2. Ghost Mode activated. The night swallowed him whole. No one followed Maxwell Donovan out of the banquet hall. No one tried to stop him. The click of his dress shoes against the pavement faded as he walked past valet stands, past gawking strangers, past the luxury vehicles lined up like trophies. He didn't wait for a cab. He didn't call anyone. He just walked. 5 blocks, then 10, until he reached a small parking lot behind an old bakery that had shut down years ago. His black Ford Taurus sat alone in the dark, plain and unassuming, just like he wanted. He slipped into the driver's seat and shut the door with a firm thud. In one motion, he pulled off his tie, tossed it onto the passenger seat, and let out a slow breath through his nose. Still calm, still cold. He sat there for a moment, his jaw clenched, staring through the windshield. The glittering skyline of Portland shimmered in the distance, mocking him with its indifference. Maxwell reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a burner phone. No contacts, no messages, prepaid, anonymous. He turned it on and tapped a pre-programmed number. It rang twice. Then a robotic voice answered. Reservation confirmed. Door code 1843. He didn't say a word. He ended the call. 10 minutes later, he was across town, parked outside a modest craftsman-style house nestled between 2 overgrown hedges. The porch light was off. The Airbnb listing had described it as minimalist and secure, and that was all Maxwell had needed. He keyed in the code. The lock clicked. Inside, it smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. No family photos. No mementos. Just a bed, a desk, a small kitchen, and blackout curtains. Perfect. He locked the door behind him, deadbolt and chain. Then he pulled the curtain shut and dropped his duffel bag onto the table with a quiet thump. He hadn't packed a single thing from home. Everything in the bag had been prepped months in advance. New clothes, a different wallet, USBs, a hard drive, 3 burner phones, and a sleek black laptop wrapped in weatherproof casing. He peeled off his suit jacket and shirt, tossing them aside like shed skin. Standing in a gray undershirt, he looked leaner, harder, less like the mild-mannered banker, more like the man he once was. The mirror over the sink caught his eye. Maxwell stepped toward it slowly. He stared at his own face, lined, weathered, but far from broken. He studied his own expression like he was debriefing an asset. No emotion. That was good. He reached for the faucet, splashed cold water on his face, and dried off with a scratchy Airbnb towel. Then he got to work. He plugged in the laptop and opened a secure system hidden behind a disguised Linux boot. After entering a 32-character encryption key from memory, a green screen flickered to life. Operation. Ghostwalker years of preparation stared back at him. Offshore accounts in the Caymans, Belize, Malta, digital firewalls built with military-grade obfuscation. Contingency files for each family member. Legal triggers already in motion. Documents, photos, signed affidavits. All cataloged. All time-stamped. But before diving into the next phase, he He reached into the bag and pulled out a stack of old printed photos. They were in a folder labeled The Act, Family Vacations, Christmas Mornings, Anniversary Dinners, Vivian smiling in a red dress, Natalie at her high school graduation, her hand gripping his arm, Preston blowing out candles with frosting on his nose. He laid them out on the floor in a neat grid. 37 years of curated lies. He stared for a long time, unmoving. Then he picked up a lighter from the counter. Flick. Flames licked the corner of a photo. Vivian kissing his cheek at a company gala, both of them beaming under the chandelier. It burned slowly, curling at the edges until the image twisted and blackened. He dropped it into the stainless steel sink. One by one, he fed the rest into the fire. No hesitation. When the last picture turned to ash, he stared into the sink until the smoke cleared. And that was that. The silence in the Airbnb was heavy, padded by years of buried truths. Maxwell sat down at the desk and opened a small black notebook filled with notes written in cipher. He flipped past the first few pages, details of account transfers, timelines, key contacts, until he found the original entry that started it all. April 11th, 2010. He remembered the exact moment. Vivian had been out late with her book club. She came back smelling like hotel, soap, and expensive bourbon. At the time, he hadn't thought much of it, just the usual disinterest of a marriage grown old and quiet. But 2 days later, he was troubleshooting their home network router. Natalie had just installed new devices, and everything was syncing like chaos. That's when he noticed it. Her iPhone backup file, accidentally copied to his encrypted archive. One click changed everything. Photos, voice notes, messages between Vivian and Bernard Holloway, Maxwell's financial advisor and supposed friend. Dozens of exchanges. You make me feel alive again. He's so predictable. The pension will set us up for life. Just a little longer, babe. Maxwell didn't rage. He didn't cry. He didn't confront. Instead, he turned the page in his life and started a new one. Quietly, patiently. While they built their betrayal, he built something else. Now, 15 years later, everything was in place. Maxwell launched his file encryption protocol. Every document, every photo, every audio file, double encrypted and uploaded to rotating cloud servers hidden behind multiple international proxies. He cross-checked access triggers. 3 emergency emails scheduled for future dates, set to send only if he didn't cancel the timer manually every 72 hours. Insurance. He connected an external hard drive and backed up the files again, just in case. Then he opened the photo archive on the laptop. Digital copies of the same photos he had burned moments ago. Vivian's face, the kids, birthday cakes, and phony smiles. He hesitated for only a second. Then, delete. One by one, they disappeared. Trash bin. Empty recycle. Gone. No trace. Just as it should be. He leaned back in the chair and stared at the dark screen. The soft hum of the laptop fan was the only sound in the room. Then a strange calmness washed over him. Not peace exactly, but clarity. A cold stillness. He hadn't lost anything. He let it all burn, brick by brick on his terms. The war hadn't just started tonight. It had started 15 years ago. And no one, not Vivian, not Bernard, not Natalie or Preston, had ever suspected a thing. They thought they were clever. They had no idea. Maxwell stood, walked over to the fridge, and grabbed a bottled water. He cracked it open, drank half, and placed it beside the bed. He reached into the bag, pulled out a small plastic case containing a USB kill switch. He smiled faintly. Still works. He slid it into his laptop port and initiated a lockout. Final step. He stared at the screen as it flickered, lines of code racing down, encrypting everything beyond recovery without the master key. A full digital vanishing act. Ghost mode. Activated. Chapter 3. The first trap snaps. 72 hours later location. Vivian's master bedroom. 7:15 a.m. Vivian Donovan awoke with a smug sense of triumph still humming through her bloodstream. Even sleep hadn't dulled the power trip of watching her husband sign away his life at that glorious retirement party. She stretched luxuriously beneath Egyptian cotton sheets, then rolled over and picked up her phone from the nightstand. 2 missed calls from Bernard. 1 from Natalie. A dozen notifications from her investment app. She smiled lazily. Probably all asking where the hell Maxwell went. Or maybe Preston already got drunk and started bragging again. She sat up, tossed on her silk robe, and padded barefoot in her walk-in closet. As she slid her diamond bracelet on, her phone buzzed again. A text from Bernard. Bernard, call me. Urgently. Your bank access, is it working? Vivian frowned. She opened her Wells First Bank app, expecting to see 7 figures nestled in the joint pension account. Instead, the screen loaded slowly, then blinked. Access denied. Account privileges revoked. She blinked. Tried again. Same result. Then she switched to her personal savings. $0. Vivian's hand tightened around the phone. What the hell? She grabbed her laptop from the dresser, placed it on the vanity table, and opened her full investment portal. Surely, it was a glitch. Password entered. The loading wheel spun. Then, account closed. Please contact your institution's fraud department. Her face drained of color. No, this can't be right. She tried another account. Same message. Another? Blocked. The screen now flashed a red warning. Your login attempt has been reported. Please contact compliance immediately. Vivian slammed the laptop shut. Her heart pounded in her ears. She grabbed her phone and dialed Bernard. He picked up on the first ring. Viv, what the hell is going on? He hissed. You tell me. The accounts are frozen. Gone. The joint pension. Maxwell moved it. There was a pause. I thought we had power of attorney. Didn't Natalie draft that into the settlement? We did, she barked. He signed everything. Then why is the pension under a new holding name? Bernard snapped. Vivian, I've been trying to trace it for the past 48 hours. Your husband liquidated and transferred everything offshore 2 days before the retirement dinner. Vivian dropped into the vanity chair, breathing hard. That's not possible, she whispered. He's a fossil. He doesn't know how to use Venmo, for Christ's sake. Bernard's voice dropped. You were sleeping next to a ghost. He was 10 steps ahead of us the whole time. He's not who we thought. Vivian didn't reply, because suddenly, somewhere deep in her chest, she knew Bernard was right. Location: downtown Portland, Preston's apartment. 9:42 a.m. Preston Donovan rolled out of bed still half drunk, reeking of bourbon and stale smoke. Poker chips were scattered across the floor. A girl he didn't recognize snored beside him, face buried in his designer pillow. He rubbed his temples and shuffled to the kitchen. Coffee, he muttered, checking his phone. A text from Javi, NO calls lit up on the screen. Javi, where's the $80,000, Preston? You said you had it by Monday. Don't play with me, man. He squinted, groaned, then opened his crypto wallet app. Loading. Still loading. Then, 0.000001 BTC. What the? He refreshed. Again. Same result. He switched to his checking account. The one he used to funnel Maxwell's monthly pension top-ups into gambling sites. Access suspended, flagged for irregular activity. What? He shouted. The girl in his bed stirred. What time is it? Shut up, he snapped. Just leave. Now. He ran to his desk and yanked open the top drawer. His emergency stash. Cash and prepaid debit cards. Gone. Just an empty envelope with a sticky note inside. Scrawled across it in thick black marker. The house always wins, Dad. His stomach dropped. And oh, he muttered, voice cracking. Another buzz. Another text. This time from a blocked number. Tell Javi I sold you out. Should make the next 72 hours fun. Sleep light. Preston's hands shook as he read it again and again. That voice in his head, the one that told him he was bulletproof, untouchable, was silent now. And Maxwell was laughing somewhere. Location: Larson and Finch LLP. Natalie's law office. 11:20 a.m. Natalie Donovan stood frozen in the hallway of the 24th floor. The screen on her office door access pad blinked red. Invalid credentials. She tried again. Slower. Then faster. Then again. Behind her, paralegal Jenna walked by, trying not to stare. Jenna, Natalie said, snapping her head around, my card's not working. Is IT screwing with the servers again? Jenna looked uncomfortable. Oh, no. Actually, Ms. Donovan, Mr. Larson asked to see you. He said immediately. Natalie stiffened. Something was wrong. She stormed down the hallway, threw open the door to the managing partner's office. "What's going on?" she demanded. David Larson stood behind his desk, arms crossed, expression grim. He didn't offer her a seat. "You tell me, Natalie." "What?" "We had a confidential client portfolio go missing. 43 case files accessed remotely from your IP at 2:14 a.m. this morning." "That's not possible," she snapped. "I wasn't even online last night." "And yet," Larson interrupted, "we traced the access through your account. And now our systems are flooded with malware-level encryptions. Your key files are blocked. Entire departments are frozen." Natalie's mouth went dry. He continued, "We're conducting a full compliance investigation. Effective immediately, your system access is revoked." "You're firing me?" "No, Natalie," he said coolly. "We're protecting ourselves from you. Legal and cybersecurity are handling it now." "Someone's framing me," she hissed. "This is sabotage. You think I'd risk my bar license over—" "Don't talk to me like I'm a rookie," Larson growled. "Until we get clarity, you're suspended. And if this doesn't check out, you're disbarred." Natalie stood in stunned silence. She pulled out her phone, opened her internal work drive, and watched in horror as every file blinked out, one after another. Locked, blocked, encrypted. In the corner of the screen, a tiny note blinked in red. "The law works both ways. You taught me that, Dad." Her phone slipped from her hand. Location: Airbnb safe house. Unknown time. Maxwell sat on the balcony of the Airbnb, sleeves rolled up, a black coffee cooling beside him. The air was sharp, clean. His laptop was open on the patio table, screens alive with code and offshore dashboards. 3 blinking pings. 1. Vivian, access denied to all financial accounts. 2. Preston, bank account closed. Crypto sweep complete. Contact with Javi confirmed. 3. Natalie, system breach initiated. Legal firm corrupted. Files frozen. Bar flagged. He read each one with the same dispassion as checking the weather. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He clicked one more button, finalizing the firewall lockdowns. All access routes terminated. A soft chime rang from his encrypted server. All assets secure. No breaches. Operation contained successful. Maxwell closed his laptop. Outside, a breeze rolled through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Life moved on. But for Vivian, Preston, and Natalie, it had just stopped. Chapter 4. Flashbacks and file drops. The morning sun cut through the blinds of the Airbnb like a silent blade, carving thin slits of light across Maxwell Donovan's bare forearms as he sat motionless at the kitchen table. His coffee had long gone cold. Beside it sat the laptop, humming faintly, its screen filled with rows of folders, his personal vault. He didn't open them right away. Instead, his gaze drifted to the far wall. Plain white. Empty. Clean. A blank canvas. Exactly what he wanted. But in his mind, it was already filled with faces. Familiar ones. Twisted in guilt, laughter, betrayal. He could still hear their voices, like echoes bouncing inside a sealed room. "You've done your duty, Max. Let's be adults about this." Vivian's voice. She had always been a master manipulator, sweet on the surface, calculated underneath. But she underestimated him. They all did. He leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes. And there it was, the flashback that had started it all. The moment the mask cracked. 15 years ago, living room. 2:37 a.m. Maxwell sat in silence, laptop open on his thighs, just a half cup of lukewarm tea beside him. He hadn't meant to stumble into anything. He'd just installed new backup software on the home Wi-Fi network, linking all devices to a master archive for security. Vivian's phone had synced automatically. He only checked the backup logs out of habit, not suspicion. But curiosity made him click. Her photo album had a separate folder, hidden under a name. Client notes. Maxwell clicked. The first image was a photo of a bed, not theirs. Then another, Vivian in lingerie, holding a glass of wine in a hotel room he'd never seen before. Then the voice messages. Bernard's voice, unmistakable. "I'm counting the days, sweetheart." He's predictable, rigid. "You deserve better. We'll get that pension once the paperwork is ready." Maxwell hadn't moved. His fingers hovered over the trackpad, but his eyes had turned cold and flat. He pressed play on the next one. Vivian's voice, breathy and sweet. He doesn't even suspect. I'll push him to draft the transfer clause this quarter. Bernard will be rich, baby. And just like that, Maxwell knew. His life was a front, a performance. They weren't just planning to leave him. They were planning to take everything on their way out. Back in the Airbnb, Maxwell opened his eyes slowly. He hadn't confronted her that night, or the next, or ever. Why? Because rage was easy. Revenge took patience. And he had more of that than anyone in the game. He tapped his keyboard and opened a file labeled root. Vivian Bernard thread. Everything was archived, dated, backed up across 3 international clouds, and stored on an air-gapped hard drive in a safety deposit box in Zurich. Every message, every call recording, photos, voice memos, metadata. He clicked through a few of the key images. One showed Bernard and Vivian at the Hyatt downtown, Vivian's arm draped around his neck, champagne in hand, the date stamped. March 28th, Maxwell and Vivian's anniversary. Classy, he murmured. He clicked open another folder. Assets hidden accounts. For years, Vivian had siphoned off household expense funds into a shadow account at a local credit union under her maiden name. Then, she bought a fake real estate development property in Arizona, a shell LLC owned by her and Bernard. They had funneled over $842,000 out of the family funds since 2012. All of it was now documented: bank transfers, forged signatures, notarized deeds. Maxwell didn't tremble, didn't blink. He simply nodded once and opened another folder. Natalie Barr compromises. Emails to judges. Texts referencing evidence manipulation. A sealed recording of her threatening a junior associate for threatening to report discovery tampering. And Preston? He opened the folder marked Preston Embezzlement Trail. Maxwell had quietly followed his son's money trail for years. Preston's online poker addiction was the tip of the iceberg. Maxwell found the logins to 3 dummy companies Preston used to launder small amounts from charity fundraisers tied to the family name. It was all there, all time-stamped, all watermarked. He reached for his USB drive, slid it into the port. A custom script blinked on screen. File drop sequence ready. He took a breath and hit enter. 2. Internal Revenue Tips at irs.gov. Mailtode at Internal Revenue Tips at irs.gov. Subject: Undeclared Holdings and Fraud. Vivian Donovan plus Bernard Holloway attached. 43 files. Photos, bank transfers, tax evasion breakdown, real estate shell holdings, whistleblower affidavit from private investigator. He hit send. 2. SEC Enforcement Division subject: Insider trading scheme. Bernard Holloway, CEO of Holloway Wealth attached. Audio recordings, transcripts, timeline of trades tied to illicit information from Maxwell's pension board. Send. 2. Oregon State Bar Ethics Division subject: Code violation and evidence suppression. Natalie Donovan attached. Case logs, falsified document edits, witness coercion transcript, video leak of closed-door threats. Send. 2. Whistlewire leaks at protonmail.com. Mailtode.whistlewireleaks@protonmail.com. Subject: High-level corruption in legal and financial sectors. Anonymous submission attached. Master archive. Redacted and unredacted versions. Includes corruption webs, account laundering, and media-ready documents. Send. Maxwell leaned back, watching the sent confirmation icons pop up one by one like dominoes falling. He opened his encrypted messaging client and scheduled the press leak package. Distribution was already mapped out. One to a national news desk, another to a mid-sized Portland-based outlet, and a final drop to a local financial watchdog podcast. Each file bore the same digital fingerprint, a cold watermark at the bottom of every page. This is what betrayal looks like, MD. He sat still for a moment, then opened a fresh whiskey, poured it into a coffee mug, took a long sip. The world had shifted, and none of them knew it yet. But they would. He stared at the screen as the upload logs completed. There was no regret, no second-guessing. He had waited 15 years, Watched their lies calcify into confidence. Watched them believe he was harmless. And now, the trap had snapped. Maxwell closed the final file, encrypted his drive, and powered down the laptop. The first salvos were fired, each one silent, each one lethal, each one carrying the weight of years they thought he'd never notice. Chapter 5. The House of Cards crumbles. Vivian Donovan stood in her once grand kitchen, the polished marble island now cluttered with unopened mail, wine-stained bills, and a crusty plate from the night before. She pressed a hand to her temple, feeling the throb of another sleepless night chasing her temple. She'd barely spoken to Preston or Natalie since everything imploded 3 days ago. And Bernard? He'd gone completely radio silent, his text dry, evasive, then non-existent. She clicked open her online banking again, praying for some sort of correction. Still frozen. The house was all she had now. At least that hadn't been touched, she reassured herself. Maxwell might have locked her out of accounts, but this house, her house, was her anchor. Paid off 5 years ago after a refinancing plan she'd put together herself. That much she knew, or thought she did. A knock rattled the front door. Sharp. Official. Vivian paused. Her stomach turned. She opened the door. 2 men in gray suits stood on the porch. One held a clipboard. The other wore a badge. Mrs. Donovan? One asked. Vivian Holloway. She flinched. Donovan. The man checked the document again. Right. Apologies. We're here on behalf of Portland Home Lending and Trust. We're serving formal notification of property repossession. This property has been in default for 61 days. Vivian stared at him. I think you have the wrong address. The man sighed, professional but tired. No, ma'am. This property, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, parcel ID 09247, is currently owned by the bank under a remortgage deed signed 5 years ago by Maxwell Donovan. The mortgage was paid in part from an asset trust that was recently liquidated. Final payments stopped 2 months ago. She blinked. That's not. This house was paid off. He said it was paid off. Ma'am, the other man said gently. We've confirmed he remortgaged the home under a business loan backed by a shell company. That company was just dissolved last week. Legally speaking, you're squatting. Squatting? She whispered. You'll receive formal eviction paperwork next. We suggest contacting legal counsel. They handed her the envelope, turned, and left. The door clicked shut with a hollow finality. Vivian dropped the envelope to the floor. Her knees hit the tile seconds later. Her fingers trembled as she stared around the house. The imported countertops, the wine rack, the damn Swarovski chandelier Maxwell had surprised her with for her birthday 2 years ago. It had all been a lie. He'd been setting the trap for years. And she had walked right into it, wearing heels and pearls. Meanwhile, Natalie's office parking garage. 11:43 a.m. Natalie Donovan sat in her Tesla, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Her phone vibrated on the center console, one notification after another. Breaking. Top Portland attorney under ethics review for evidence misconduct whistleblower leaks shake legal elite. Donovan named. She clicked the screen angrily. More headlines. More speculation. Sloppy, she muttered. This was sloppy. Her office had been locked since yesterday. Her credentials were suspended. But this wasn't just internal discipline. It was blood in the water. Her phone buzzed again, this time a call. Her assistant, Morgan. Yeah. Ms. Donovan, I'm sorry. I thought you should hear it from me. The Bar Association just issued an emergency disbarment order. It's active immediately. Natalie sat back, blinking hard. No hearing. No. They said the documentation, what was sent in anonymously, it's all time-stamped. Voice memos, typed transcripts, case files with metadata matching your firm's servers. Natalie could feel her throat tighten. Morgan's voice dropped. They said you threatened a paralegal about burying evidence on the Chambers versus Hartwell case. Natalie closed her eyes. The elevator incident. The recording Maxwell must have found. She hadn't even remembered there was a camera in that hallway. Her voice, clear as crystal. If you take this outside the firm, you'll never work in this city again. Morgan, tell them it was edited. It's fake, I can't. They issued an order to suspend your legal license. They're pulling your bio from the firm site already. Natalie didn't respond. The line clicked dead. She looked up, just in time to see a Channel 6 news van pull into the parking garage entrance. A cameraman stepped out. The reporter was already brushing her hair back, mic in hand. Natalie shoved the car into reverse, tires squealing. She didn't stop until she'd cleared 3 city blocks. Elsewhere, Preston's office lobby. 2:06 p.m. Preston Donovan leaned over the security desk, confused and breathless. "What do you mean I can't go up?" he barked. "I work on the 18th floor." The guard gave a nervous shrug. "We were told no one from Holloway Futures is allowed entry right now. There's federal presence upstairs." "Federal?" Preston's voice cracked. The elevator chimed open, and 3 agents in dark windbreakers stepped out. One flashed a badge. "Preston Donovan?" He froze. "Yeah. SEC. You've been named in a whistleblower file involving insider trading and embezzlement. We'd like to ask you a few questions." Preston laughed awkwardly. "What?" "No, you got the wrong guy. I manage a few minor portfolios. I'm not even on the board." One of the agents stepped forward and pulled a small folder from a briefcase. Inside, screenshots, emails, transfer logs. Each page had a watermark at the bottom. "Operation Ghost Walker," the other agent added. "The evidence came through an encrypted drop, all verified. Timestamps go back 8 years. You were siphoning investor funds through dummy platforms and pushing them into offshore sports books. That's not minor." Preston took a step back. "I want a lawyer." "You'll need a damn good one," the agent replied. And just like that, the youngest Donovan found himself escorted out of his own office. The cameras in the lobby flicked to life just as they walked him past the reception desk. Hours later, a coffee shop across town, a local journalist hunched over her laptop in a corner booth, fingers flying. On screen, a confidential file titled Donovan Family Leak Series Part 1.pdf. Attached were folders labeled Vivian, Real Estate Fraud/Wire Transfers/ Shell Entities, Preston, Betting Rings/SEC Violations/ Offshore Hiding, Natalie, Legal Ethics/Witness Coercion/Sealed Case Leaks, a note at the top. Released to public only if they start playing victim. They won't stop until the world sees them. MD. She whistled under her breath. Someone had dropped a nuke. Her phone buzzed again. Tips from a second anonymous source. The same signature watermark. The name Maxwell Donovan hadn't hit headlines yet, but it would. Soon. Airbnb, Maxwell's location. Time unknown. He sat at the table again. Coffee fresh this time. The laptop in front of him was open to a live news feed. Developing story. Multiple members of a powerful Portland family under investigation. Real estate fraud, bar disbarment, and insider audits continue as anonymous leaks deepen. He didn't smile. Didn't flinch. He just sat quietly, watching. Still unseen. Still in control. Still silent. Chapter 6. 43 missed calls. The Airbnb's living room was bathed in amber from the late afternoon sun, filtering through half-closed blinds. The silence inside was peaceful, clinical, almost. Maxwell Donovan sat on the corner of a leather couch, laptop open, a glass of 12-year Macallan perched on the side table. A faint jazz tune played from the Bluetooth speaker behind him, the only sound in the room. He had turned his phone off 3 days ago, not out of fear, out of choice. But now it was time. Maxwell reached for the burner phone he had sealed in the kitchen drawer when he arrived. It was one of 3 identical models he'd purchased anonymously 6 months ago. He powered it on, sat back, and watched as the notifications began flooding in like an approaching storm. Ping, 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 BZZT ping. He tilted his head, smiled faintly. 43 missed calls. The number glowed on the cracked screen like a monument to chaos. 18 from Vivian, 14 from Natalie, 9 from Preston, 2 from Bernard. Dozens more texts followed, each more frantic than the last. He scrolled slowly, reading only the previews. Vivian, Max, I need to talk. Please. I didn't know. We need to fix this. Vivian, the house. They're taking the house. What did you do? Vivian, if you ever loved me, you'll answer. Vivian, please. I'm begging you. Natalie, you think this is a game? You ruined me, Dad. Preston. Yo, what the fuck, old man? Hobby's people came by my condo. They're serious. Bernard. Maxwell. We need to talk. You're putting everyone in danger. This has gone too far. Maxwell took a sip of his scotch, savored it, and leaned back into the cushions. He opened the voicemail inbox. 10 new messages. He let them play. Voicemail 1. Natalie, furious. You are clinically insane. You torch my entire life. Do you even know what disbarment means? I can't work. I had everything planned. You're going to regret this. Delete. Voicemail 2. Preston panicked. Dad, seriously, whatever you did, undo it. I've got people watching my building now. These guys aren't bluffing. I'm dead if they don't get their money. Please, tell me where it went. Delete. Voicemail 3. Bernard. Cold. Calculated. Maxwell, you made your point. But let's be adults. Come in, talk. I'll make sure Vivian doesn't press charges. We can renegotiate terms. Maxwell let out a quiet laugh. Delete. Voicemails 4 through 7. Natalie again. Preston again. More threats. More screaming. Delete. 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 Voicemail 8. Unknown number. A gruff voice. This is Jack from Northwest Media. We received a leak claiming to be from you. If you'd like to comment before the second part runs, call me by midnight. He saved that one, just in case. Voicemail 9. Vivian. Soft. Wrecked. Max, I know you're listening. I know you. I was stupid. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't know about Preston's stuff or what Natalie was doing. I thought we were just protecting what we built. Her voice cracked. You said once you'd never hurt me. Do you remember that? In Barcelona? I wore that blue dress you liked. You held my hand like it was your whole world. A pause. I miss the man you used to be. I miss the husband who made Sunday coffee and wrote little notes in my books. Please don't do this. Don't end us like this. He waited. Her breathing wavered. Then, Max, I'm scared. Click. Maxwell stared at the wall for a long moment. Then, without a word, he hit delete. Voicemail 10. Bernard again. This time rattled. They're investigating my firm. We're under audit. You leaked internal trades? You knew about those positions before I even moved them. Were you watching me the whole time? You sick bastard. Delete. Maxwell set the phone down on the table, leaned forward, and poured himself another 2 fingers of scotch. The smooth burn hit his chest like a slow-moving fire. It was astonishing, he thought, how predictable they all were when the news tightened. Vivian tried guilt. Natalie tried fury. Preston begged like a wounded animal. Bernard flipped between superiority and fear. Not one of them apologized. Not for the years they made him feel invisible. Not for the condescension, the secrets, the years of being nothing more than a human ATM with a fading signature. They didn't miss him. They missed control. Maxwell picked up the remote, muted the jazz, and opened his laptop. He navigated through his folders and double-clicked on a file labeled Trap Play Final. The screen opened to a digital photo album. Each photo had been hand-selected, named, sorted with quiet care. The title above them in bold, all caps. The real game begins. The first photo was a wide shot of Maxwell's old home, the one Vivian was now squatting in, taken from surveillance drone. Dated just a week before he'd remortgaged it for the 3rd time. In the window, a blurred figure of Vivian holding a wine glass, looking out, completely unaware. The second photo was a scan of Bernard's forged financial documents, overlaid with Maxwell's handwritten red notes, circling the lies. Underneath it read, pattern repeated, ego is a system flaw. Another photo, Natalie, speaking a legal gala 2 years ago, shaking hands with a judge she had later coerced. The metadata proved their conversations weeks before the ruling. Next, Preston passed out in a VIP lounge in Vegas, a brunette on his lap, drinks spilled, poker chips on the floor. Taken by a PI, Maxwell had paid extra to follow him for 3 years. Dozens more followed, each one a symbol of patience, timing, and cold strategy. They never knew they were being photographed, followed, tracked. Maxwell clicked through them with surgeon-like stillness. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. Because truth was never about mercy. It was about consequences. He stopped on the final photo, a shot of all 4 of them from a vacation in Italy 10 years ago. Vivian in the center, Natalie checking her phone, Preston smirking at the camera, and him, Maxwell, slightly behind them. The shadow, invisible even then. He stared at that image for a long time. Then, with a single keystroke, he renamed the album. The Real Game Begins. Act 2, Inch, Chapter 7. Operation Endgame. The city sky wore a dull gray. Hanging low over Portland like it, too, was waiting for something to snap. Somewhere on the east side, in the back room of a coffee bar no one remembered after sunset, Maxwell Donovan typed out a single message from a burner phone. He read it once. No spelling errors. Short, sharp, surgical. Meet me at the Civic. Tuesday, 10 o'clock a.m. Come alone. We settle this today, and he hit send. The message vanished from his device the moment it was delivered. Burners didn't keep histories, and neither did he. The trap was laid. Tuesday, 9:56 a.m., the Civic Center rooftop garage. Bernard Holloway stepped out of his Mercedes-Benz, his eyes scanning the rooftop. He adjusted his tie and pulled his blazer tighter. He was sweating, despite the cool breeze drifting off the river below. The Civic was quiet today, almost suspiciously so. Only 4 other cars dotted the open lot, and no sign of Maxwell. He checked his phone. No texts, no missed calls. Just that one message still fresh in his mind. We settle this today. Bernard smirked bitterly. Settle what? He was already scrambling. His firm was hemorrhaging. His lawyers were choking on legal sludge Maxwell had shoveled at them in the dark. But today might be leverage. Maybe Maxwell wanted to negotiate. Maybe he finally realized he went too far. Or maybe, just maybe, he wanted a truce. Bernard walked toward the center of the garage, past a yellow-painted divider line. That's when he noticed it on the pavement. A black Pelican case, sitting upright, locked. He hesitated, then approached. A note was taped to the top. Open me. Bernard glanced around again. Still no Maxwell. No movement. Cautiously, he popped the latches. Inside was a single tablet. The screen was black until it flickered to life. A video autoplayed. And there he was, Maxwell Donovan. Not in person, but on screen. Seated calmly in a chair, linen shirt, whiskey glass in hand. The background blurred. His expression unreadable. Maxwell stared into the camera for 2 solid seconds before speaking. Bernard, I told you once that the worst kind of thief is the one who thinks he's clever. You thought screwing my wife and stealing from my accounts would go unnoticed. You're not clever, Bernard. You're arrogant and sloppy. Bernard took a half step back. What the hell is this? The screen continued. You used my pension board access to redirect funds. You laundered money through dummy ventures in Belize. You filed fake quarterly earnings with SEC exemptions forged by Vivian's signature. Every move you made, I documented it. For over a decade. Bernard shook his head. No, this is some trick. You lied to my face for years, Bernard. So I figured the least I could do is return the favor. And then Maxwell smiled. A slow, surgical smile. Look behind you. Bernard froze. His breath hitched. His feet rooted to the spot. But instinct forced him to turn. 3 men in dark suits were approaching, flanking a 4th in a black tactical vest. The lead agent raised a badge. I'm Agent Collins, IRS Criminal Investigations Division. Mr. Bernard Holloway, you're under arrest for wire fraud, tax evasion, securities fraud, and conspiracy to defraud a federal pension system. Bernard's mouth opened. Wait, this is insane. This is a setup. You have the right to remain silent. Agent Collins continued. Anything you say. Bernard tried to bolt, but a second agent was already there, slamming him against the side of his Mercedes, cuffing him tightly. The tablet slipped from Bernard's hands and clattered to the pavement. The screen was still playing. Maxwell's voice echoed out one last time. You should have remembered who I was before you decided to become my enemy. The agents read Bernard's rights, then pulled him toward the waiting black SUV. His face contorted between rage and disbelief. You son of a bitch, he shouted, twisting against the cuffs. This isn't over. Maxwell, you hear me? This isn't over. But Maxwell was long gone. He'd never been there. He never needed to be. Chapter 8. Checkmate. The summons had arrived the night before, hand-delivered, official, and worded like a ceasefire offer. legal mediation, family asset division, and civil review location. Hawthorne District Legal Building, room 4A time. 9 o'clock a.m. All parties required. Natalie read it 3 times, her hands trembling slightly. Even disbarred, she still recognized the tone. Formal, coordinated, mandated, and above all, not optional. Vivian was already pacing when Natalie arrived at the house she was now unofficially squatting in. The curtains were drawn, boxes half-packed. She looked disheveled, hair unbrushed, lips bare, and the skin around her eyes dark from lack of sleep. "I don't like this," Vivian muttered, glancing out the window. "He's orchestrating something. This has him written all over it." Preston walked in behind Natalie, still in sunglasses from the night before, reeking faintly of stale vodka and desperation. "Maybe it's just an attempt to split the pension," he said. "Legally, I mean. Like terms and stuff. We'll settle. He'll get some token amount and we walk." Natalie shot him a look. "You think the guy who burned down 3 careers in a week wants a settlement?" Vivian rubbed her temples. "Still, we don't have a choice. We show up, we stay calm, we get through it." They left in silence. 8:54 a.m. Hawthorne District Legal Building. They arrived in a single black SUV, hoping to keep things quiet. But that hope was instantly incinerated the moment they turned the corner onto Hawthorne Avenue. The sidewalk outside the courthouse was packed. Camera crews, photographers, microphones, flashes, dozens of voices shouting at once. "Vivian, are you still living in the house you no longer own?" "Natalie, did you threaten a witness in 2019? Preston, care to comment on the insider audit tied to you and Holloway Futures? Do any of you regret betraying Maxwell Donovan?" Natalie's mouth fell open. This is a circus." Vivian shoved past the first wave of cameras, jaw clenched. "Don't say a word. Eyes forward." They were ushered into the building by 2 stiff-faced security guards, each of whom looked both intimidated and amused. Cameras still clicked from the windows. But inside the courtroom, room 4A was worse. Much worse, because the room wasn't empty. It was already full. Rows of chairs lined with IRS agents, SEC auditors, ethics board members, and even 2 district attorneys. At the back stood several recognizable reporters from the Oregonian and Channel 6 News. "What the hell is this?" Preston muttered, paling, and then the lights dimmed. A hush fell across the courtroom. A large projector screen lowered from the ceiling at the front of the room. The seal of the court flickered briefly, then was replaced by a dark screen with a single glowing word. "Play the mediator." At the front, a no-nonsense woman in a gray pantsuit spoke calmly. "Mr. Donovan could not attend today in person. He's asked that this message be played in lieu of his presence." Vivian's fingers clenched into fists. Natalie didn't sit. She was too busy scanning the crowd, her instincts screaming that something was very, very wrong. The screen brightened. Maxwell appeared. Not old, not frail. Calm, polished, seated on a deck somewhere tropical, the ocean wind tousling his gray-streaked hair. His eyes held no malice, no rage, only closure and control. "Vivian, Natalie, Preston," he began, voice smooth, steady. "You're probably wondering why you're here. That's fair. You spent years planning how to strip me of my legacy, and my own retirement party, no less. Public humiliation was part of the plan." "Bold," he smirked. "But there's one thing you never understood about me. I never lose. I adapt. I wait. And when I strike, I don't aim to wound." He leaned forward in the video, eyes narrowing. "You took my legacy, so I took your future." The screen split. On the left, a slideshow of documents, bank records, fake real estate transactions, falsified case files with Natalie's signature, Preston's gambling fund flowcharts. On the right, video clips, one of Natalie yelling at a junior associate, another of Preston handing a manila envelope to a known bookie, then one of Vivian at a wine bar, kissing Bernard, time-stamped on Maxwell's last wedding anniversary. "You thought you were hunting a helpless old man, but I was building a labyrinth. Every lie you told walked you deeper into it." The video paused, then shifted to Maxwell raising a glass. "Game over." The screen went black. Silence. And then the explosion. The mediator stood. Per the court's direction and under advisement of federal authorities, the evidence you've just seen will be processed for immediate legal review. Hard copies of relevant files are being distributed. Agents moved through the room, placing thick manila envelopes in front of each family member. Vivian stared at hers. It was labeled, Donovan, Vivian, fraud package, Natalie's read. Donovan, Natalie, ethics violations, witness coercion, file manipulation, Preston's. Donovan, Preston, embezzlement, unlawful betting, securities misconduct. Are you kidding me? Natalie shouted, standing so fast her chair slammed backward. This was not a mediation. This is an ambush. Sit down, Ms. Donovan, the mediator snapped. You're no longer an attorney. You don't get to object. Vivian opened her envelope, her face blanching as she thumbed through page after page of her own betrayal, laid bare, indisputable, and cataloged with clinical precision. He had all this? She whispered. For years, the mediator confirmed. He's been compiling it since 2010. The timestamps don't lie. Preston tore his open and swore under his breath. This is entrapment. None of this holds up. It's circumstantial. It's just paper. Then you're welcome to challenge it in court. One of the IRS agents offered calmly. We'd love to discuss your sports betting portfolio, especially the part funneled through a children's hospital charity trust. Preston sat down hard, face crumbling into his hands. The journalists in the back started taking notes faster. Vivian stood slowly. He wanted this, she said flatly. He planned this. The audience. The exposure. This isn't justice. It's a show trial. No, the mediator corrected. This is what accountability looks like. Across the courtroom, someone handed Channel 6 a USB drive. The label read, "To be aired. Donovan family final statement. Public release approved." Natalie was shaking. Vivian slumped into her seat, her lips parted, eyes blank. And Preston? He started crying. Not softly, not stoically. Loud panic sobs. 3 cameras caught it from different angles. The family that once mocked a man for wasting his life had now been dismantled by him. Piece by piece. Publicly. Permanently. Outside, the press waited for the fallout. Inside, the Donovan legacy crumbled under the weight of its own arrogance. And Maxwell Donovan? Nowhere to be seen, but everywhere in the room. Chapter 9. The final move. The courtroom buzzed with the heavy hum of finality. Vivian Donovan sat in a sea of stern faces, federal prosecutors, agents, and journalists, all focused on the spectacle of her unraveling. Her once impeccable posture had softened into something brittle, her eyes darting like trapped prey behind thin glasses. The air in the room was thick, suffocating. She was no longer the proud woman who dominated boardrooms and banished inconvenient truths with a flick of her wrist. The judge's gavel struck sharply. Vivian Donovan, you stand charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. Due to the overwhelming evidence presented, he said, voice cold and exacting, all your assets are hereby frozen and seized by the United States government pending further forfeiture proceedings. Vivian's lips parted, but no words came. The weight of her crumbling empire pressed on her chest, heavier than any handcuffs. Outside the courthouse, the press circled like vultures. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras clicked relentlessly. Mrs. Donovan, can you comment on the fraud allegations? One reporter called. Vivian turned briefly, eyes glassy but defiant. I have nothing to say to the press, she whispered, voice cracked. Then she was whisked away by guards before the storm could hit harder. Meanwhile, across town, Preston Donovan sat behind bars in a dimly lit cell. The air smelled stale, mixed with the faint tang of disinfectant and despair. He ran his hands through his greasy hair, staring at the scratched metal door as if it might open and release him by sheer force of will. The conviction had come fast, proof of insider trading, embezzlement, and illegal betting networks enough to guarantee years. He clenched his jaw, fists white, anger simmering beneath exhaustion. One night, a fellow inmate sidled up to him. You the Donovan kid, huh? Heard about the big family fall. Gotta say, your old man really played you all. Shame, man. Preston spat on the concrete floor. Yeah? You got any bright ideas how to get out of here? The inmate grinned. Not a chance. You're done. Preston sank onto his cot. Alone. Forgotten. Far from the chaos of courtrooms and jail cells, Natalie Donovan wiped down tables at a bustling restaurant under a false name, Maya. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her sharp legal wardrobe was replaced by a simple black blouse and khaki pants. She smiled politely at customers, but her eyes held the distant look of someone who had lost everything. Behind the counter, two waiters whispered, glancing at her sometimes. "Hey, Maya, you okay?" One asked quietly during a slow moment. She nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just tired." The other shook his head, unconvinced. One evening, after the last guest left, Natalie stood alone in the empty dining room. She slid off her apron and stared into the bathroom mirror. No longer Natalie Donovan, attorney at one of Portland's top law firms. Now just Maya. She touched the glass, a ghost of the woman she used to be. Back in a secure interrogation room, Bernard Holloway sat slumped in a chair, hands cuffed to the table. His face was pale, sweat beading at his temples. The confident swagger he once wore like armor was stripped away. Across from him sat two federal agents, files piled between them. "You're looking at serious time, Bernard. But cooperate, and you might get some leniency." Bernard's eyes darted nervously. "You expect me to throw Vivian and the rest under the bus?" Agent Collins smirked. "It's a deal. You help us nail them all, and you keep some freedom." Bernard swallowed hard. Minutes later, he confessed. He gave up bank records, emails, hidden offshore accounts. He named names, detailed every crooked deal, every shell company, every falsified document. But for all his cooperation, it was too late. News outlets exploded with the revelations. The public spectacle was unforgiving. Vivian's name was synonymous with greed and betrayal. Her social circle vanished overnight. Invitations stopped coming. Old friends distanced themselves. She was blacklisted from every professional and social group she once ruled. Preston's conviction became a cautionary tale in every major paper. He was locked away, a shadow of the arrogant man who once mocked his father. Natalie's fall from grace was steep and cruel. Bar associations disbarred her, stripped her of licenses and reputations. No law firm would touch her. Under the alias Maya, she disappeared into anonymity, haunted by the legacy of the woman she was. Bernard, the mastermind behind many of their schemes, became a witness for the prosecution, but his betrayal was no shield. He was convicted for his own crimes, facing years behind bars. Maxwell Donovan watched it all unfold from a remote beach house, miles away from the chaos he had orchestrated. His phone buzzed incessantly, calls from journalists, lawyers, even former colleagues. He ignored them. For the first time in years, he felt a quiet peace settle in his bones. The man who had once been a pawn in his family's game had finally become the player. Chapter 10. The King's Gambit. The sun dipped low behind the towering palms, casting a molten gold shimmer across the sapphire waves. The only sound was the gentle splash of water against the polished deck of a secluded villa. Somewhere off the coast of Bali, a man sat alone. Maxwell Donovan. Not the Maxwell Donovan Portland once knew, the betrayed husband, the retired banker with 40 years of quiet sacrifice, but a man reborn, a ghost freed from shackles, watching his old world burn from afar. He lounged in a white linen shirt, sleeves rolled up, bare feet resting on a teak table. A slow breeze tousled his salt and pepper hair. A single glass of whiskey rested on the low table beside him, untouched. His eyes, sharp and calculating as ever, scanned a notebook filled with scribbles, plans, and chessboard sketches. But today, there were no moves to make. The game was over. For the first time in years, Maxwell allowed himself to simply be. His mind drifted back. 15 years ago, the night he discovered the first thread of betrayal. Vivian's phone accidentally synced to his tablet. A single message from Bernard Holloway, financial advisor, flirtatious, secretive, damning. His world cracked, but he didn't break. Not then. Not ever. Instead, he retreated into silence. meticulously building his fortress. Offshore accounts, shell companies, encrypted files, all while wearing the mask of the devoted husband and loyal father. All while they laughed behind his back. He remembered the countless dinners where Vivian's eyes avoided his. The growing distance of Natalie's sneers. Preston's careless arrogance. They thought he was weak. They thought he'd crumble. But Maxwell, he was the patient king, waiting for his moment. A gentle chime broke the silence. His phone buzzed. A video call. The name flashing. Raymond Donovan, his younger brother. Maxwell tapped the screen, answering smoothly. Raymond. Max. The voice came, warm but weary. How's the island? You sure you're not getting too much sun? Maxwell allowed a rare chuckle. Some things never change. You still worried about me getting a sunburn? Just worried you might regret everything. Raymond's tone softened. After all that, all they took from you. Maxwell's gaze hardened, a slow smirk curling at the corners of his mouth. Regret, he repeated, only that I didn't finish them sooner. Raymond exhaled. I always knew you were playing 4D chess, but even I didn't see this coming. Maxwell leaned back, eyes scanning the horizon. I gave them every chance to stop, every opportunity to make things right. But they chose betrayal. They gambled, and they lost. Raymond's voice dropped. Do you miss them? Any part of the life you left behind? Maxwell smiled, quiet, measured. Only the part that made me stronger. A beat of silence passed between them. Then Raymond's voice was softer still. Be careful. Max, freedom is a gift. Don't let the past chain you to it. Maxwell nodded. I've learned to live beyond the chains. He ended the call. The laptop before him hummed quietly. Files and folders named with cryptic titles, each representing years of surveillance, evidence, and silent vengeance. Maxwell opened the encrypted vault one last time. He reviewed the digital footprints of Vivian, Natalie, Preston, and Bernard, trails leading nowhere now but dead ends and dust. With a few deliberate clicks, he initiated the deletion sequence. The files began to vanish. Encrypted backups, offshore shell logs, surveillance video, all erased. No trace. Freedom, finally. He leaned back, watching the progress bar crawl. A distant memory came unbidden. Vivian at the retirement party, smiling coldly, thrusting the divorce papers across the table. Natalie sneering. Preston's mocking laughter. How little they knew. Maxwell mused quietly. Their greed had been their undoing. They wanted his pension. They thought it was theirs for the taking. But Maxwell had played a longer game. And now, as the final file disappeared into the void, he whispered, They wanted my pension. I took their futures. That's what I call interest. The sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and fiery reds. The ocean breathed peacefully beneath the stars. And Maxwell Donovan, he was gone.